Forget about walking and chewing gum at the same time. Does the president risk looking like he can't get anything done any of the time? As soon as he pivots, bad guys launch rockets. Now, that does not mean President Obama is to blame for a plane crash. But to hear financial watcher Craig Smith tell it, he is to blame for providing the environment that allows rebels to seize a power vacuum and create a crisis. Craig, good to see you, but explain that. It's an interesting argument. When the central figure or the CEO is aloof, bad things happen, right?
Yeah, it sure does, Neil. And look, this president is either disinterested, distracted. I mean, just his statement on Friday just had no passion to it, Neil. And think about it. He said we may have a terrible tragedy. We may have had a terrible tragedy. Are you serious? Even if it hadn't been shot down, it was a tragedy. 295 people lost their lives. And to see that headline at the New York Times where it says, may be at risk of looking bad, Jennifer Palmieri, the White House communications director, says we don't want to unduly alarm the American people and give them a sense that there's a crisis. I hate to break it to Jennifer. There is a crisis. There's a crisis on the border.
Right. When leaders of any stripe ignore the magnitude of a crisis for fear that they're going to create a crisis, they've got an even bigger crisis. I mean, when a plane is shot down, even when the first indication people aren't so sure it was shot down, there is nothing to be gained from just sort of being dismissive of it. And the same could apply to an escalating immigration crisis, which we'll explore later on here, about which the president knew was getting out of hand more than a year ago. I could go on and on with troubles at the VA, et cetera. But it is a pattern of sort of distant, hands-off, aloof behavior that concerns me.
Well, and let me tell you why I think we have it, Neil, in fairness to the president. Okay, he does not have executive experience. Executives know how to handle more than one issue at a time. That's why I'm always a big proponent of seeing governors become presidents, because they've been in the trenches. They know how to deal with more than one thing at a time.
I love you dearly, but Jimmy Carter was a governor, and I think highly of him personally, but it doesn't always work.
I didn't say all governors. I said.
I got you.
But here's the point. This president clearly is disengaged, Neil. I mean, let's go back in history. The night after the Benghazi attack, where an ambassador was murdered, 3 Americans were murdered, he was on a plane going to a fundraiser in Vegas. And Fox News did a great piece on this. They showed how many fundraisers he's been at in 6 years compared to 8 years in the Bush administration. And here's my point on that. He likes doing that, Neil. He's comfortable out speaking. He's comfortable out engaging with the people and raising money and raising the Democratic banner. But when it comes to dealing with day-to-day crises and day-to-day issues where he needs to look like he's in charge and he's dispatching the right people to the right places, he's not good at that. And a perfect example of that is you have Samantha Powers in front of the UN saying, Russia, Russia, Russia. She's putting it all on Russia. And here you have the president saying, well, you know, Russia needs to get together with the separatists, and, you know, we need to look at Ukraine and their involvement. Very, very wishy-washy. You got John Kerry on the 3 major shows yesterday. I mean, I don't know if you watched them, Neil. I only watched Fox News Sunday and then had to gag through the other 2 this morning to be prepared. But the bottom line is that he was all over the place, Neil. Excuse after excuse after excuse.
Well, I do think there's something to the, if you say something is a big concern to you, you got to act like it then. And if you say something is a crisis, you can't be going to another event that seems to minimize what you just reported and just stated. Look, I know presidents have to do a lot of things, but in times of crises, they can only focus on one thing. And I think of people like the chairman of Johnson & Johnson, middle of the Tylenol crisis. He was consumed with that crisis and addressing tainted Tylenol capsules that were not even of his own doing, but it became his all-consuming focus. And people then trusted him and Johnson & Johnson going forward to deal with such crises. When you hide them, avoid them, avert them, you will be buried by them. And I just fear with what we've seen, this president risks repeatedly going down that same path.
That is a great example, Neil. You couldn't have pulled a better example than the Tylenol scare. And look, this president went to a fundraiser and jumped on the stage and went, hey, everybody. And then for 40 seconds, he addressed what is a tragedy, what is a mass murder, for Pete's sake.
Appearances mean a lot. Appearances mean a lot. Craig, and you got both, young man, appearance and substance. Craig Smith, Swiss America Trading Corp. CEO. Thank you.
Good to see you, Neil.